Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Brady, founder and head coach of Science of Speed. Tonight with us, we've got Dr. Aaron Geyer and Miss Elyse Gallegos as well, who are joining in to help us out here. And hopefully a little bit later on, we're also going to have Science of Speed coach Patrick Valentine joining in as well. Aaron, if you would just take a moment and introduce yourself to the audience that we've got tuned in here, and then we'll pass it on to Elyse as well to do the same.
Sure. Thanks, Brady. Thanks for having me. Just to give you some of my background, my professional background is that I'm an orthopedic surgeon with Tallahassee Orthopedic Clinic. I've been here in Tallahassee about 14 years. My subspecialty is foot and ankle disorders, and so I did some training in that, fellowship training in that, and so that's my subspecialty area. I have been very actively involved with athletes over the years. For the last about 12 years, I've been the Florida State University foot and ankle specialist, one of the team physicians. I take care of the cross country and track teams, as well as any foot and ankle problems that any of the teams have. And so I'm very, very well versed with dealing with athletes and their injuries. And then myself, personally, I've been an athlete ever since high school and before. I started participating in triathlons when I was 15. And then over the years have kind of done that, got into the cycling world, got into the running world, kind of mountain bike world, little here and there. More recently, in the last few years, got involved with half Ironmans and Ironmans, as well as the new gravel craze too, and that's my new favorite thing. So I've done a lot of competition over the years in all of those disciplines. I've had a lot of injuries over the years in all of those disciplines. So those things myself, as well as with my patients. So that's just kind of in a nutshell what I'm about. And I think because of my athletic background, it's also helped me do a lot and understand a lot of the athletes when they get hurt in my professional background. So it's been very good on both sides of that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight and adding some insight from all of your history in sport and also just perspective from a professional career. Elyse, would you take a moment and give everybody a little bit of insight about you as well?
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me, guys. My name's Elyse Gallegos. I am a stay-at-home mom now of almost 2. I'm due here in about 4 weeks, so really excited to do that. And then I've been competing in triathlon since 2006. So that was when I was heading into college. I just didn't want to gain the freshman 15. Got into triathlon. I was absolutely terrible. I think I came in like close to dead last. And I guess it just fueled the fire because I was so mad that everyone was passing me. And it just spiraled out of control from there. So 15 years later, I have done over 16 plus Ironmans. Long distance is my specialty. I've been to Kona or qualified for Kona 3 times. Mm-hmm. And I love it. My background initially is I'm a registered nurse, neonatal intensive care unit. And now just continue to train. I train through my pregnancy. I train completely full time, and I love it. And I think that it's way easier than caring for a toddler full time.
Well, that's inevitable here. You know that, right, Elyse?
Yeah, I would rather go on a 4-hour bike ride than be focused and try to keep my child from killing himself, for 4 hours. So much
easier said than done.
Yeah.
Yep, certainly. Well, very good. Well, thank you so much for joining in, Elyse, as well. I appreciate that. And look forward to going through some of these questions that we've already got here tonight. For those of you that are watching already, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments section here for us. We'll try and get to all of the questions that come up as the evening comes on, but wanted to start off with really the number one question that from the Science of Speed standpoint that we've received this year, and just want to get your guys' insight on this as well. And really what it is with 2020 and 2021 already starting off with a lot of events canceled or being postponed. How has that impacted your guys' schedule specifically? Elyse, would you go ahead and start off kind of how that's impacted you and your training and racing schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you just have to, go with the flow.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, with Ironman events, they want to make it happen. They want to make the money, and so do the towns. The towns benefit from
Mhm.
it, so they wait almost till last minute. And so, as an Ironman athlete, you can't really just pick up training all of a sudden or just go do it on a whim. Not unless if you want to actively compete
Right.
or even finish for some of us. So honestly, I've treated ever since COVID started almost, over a year ago. I have been using this as an opportunity, and it's been an awesome opportunity to work on my weaknesses. So
Okay.
building up the mileage running for me, like I know for a woman, I need to be, if I want to be competitive in Kona on the Big Island, 3 hour, 3:15 marathon needs to be where I need to be. All the while still maintaining that fast bike, improving my power, improving my swim when you can swim.
Yep.
So I've just been using this as an awesome opportunity to gradually and slowly build that base.
Okay.
And work on those weaknesses and not have to have time off, post race, post Ironman. Usually we have to take that 4 weeks off to recover and get your hormones back and all that fun stuff. So, yeah, I think it's been a good blessing in disguise. And honestly, it just makes me more eager to get back to the start line. So,
Good. Good. Okay. What about you, Dr. Geyer? What have you seen for yourself?
Well, I think it's been a lot more difficult because as most of us do, we tend to tailor our training around events that are coming up. And when
Mhm.
there's an event that's canceled, I had a couple events that were canceled last year that was really frustrating, as I'm sure we're all frustrated. It does make it a little more difficult. I think what I've mostly done, and I've worked with my coach too, in Science of Speed there, that we basically just tried to keep a really good fitness base. And instead of ramping up for certain events and things and having to taper and things like that, we've kind of really worked more on maintaining a good base. The other thing
Right.
I have concentrated more on this past year that I was a little lax on in the past was core strength and doing some other more resistance training,
Mhm.
since I wasn't really doing that as much, and now I am, and I think that's actually been a benefit of not having events. As I've
Mhm.
worked on that, that's actually made me a stronger cyclist, really a stronger runner. Running has been always my weakest point in the
Mhm.
triathlons, and after doing some different training things with that this year, since there hasn't been any events, my running times have actually, even on training, have gotten better and better. So I've really been focusing on my weak area, which has been running too. So it's been a blessing in disguise, I think.
Right. Right. Okay. Have either of you, I know with our athletes, it's kind of a wide range. We have some people that handle it with that same approach, and then we have some people that really have struggled with, with COVID and with the stress that it's added to life, whether it's from a life standpoint or a work standpoint. Have you guys experienced that personally or seen that with any of your training partners or friends as well?
yeah, I mean, I just moved here to Tallahassee, Florida, kind of in the a little bit after COVID hit, and so it's been
Mhm.
so hard to meet people.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people out there watching this too can relate, but I love the group swims. A coach on deck pushing you
Right.
every step of the way, and even group rides and stuff. And for me, it's always a struggle. Yeah, I mean, heck yeah.
Okay.
But I guess I'm stubborn and I'm just determined to get better and get
Mhm.
back to the island. Especially to prove people wrong that
Okay.
say that you're a mom and you just can't, you're done or whatever like that. It's
Mhm.
just motivation that fuels the fire for me.
Okay.
So I don't know. I just say to people out there, like, find your motivation and put that put that up on your trainer or on your
Right.
mirror and look at that every day and let that be your motivation to do. You don't have to do every workout, but 80% of for the week. Aim for something.
Mhm. Okay. What about you, Dr. Geyer? What have you experienced or seen from a motivation standpoint this year?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I love about training is actually group training, group
Okay.
rides. I love group rides. I love going out to the group rides on Wednesdays and Saturdays with cycling, especially.
Mhm.
And I always, it makes you a better athlete when you are being pushed by your friends and by your co-athletes. So there's been a lot of people that haven't been able to do the group rides for one reason or another. And as a result, I really missed that. And I think that has been frustrating because that's what I enjoy the most about training.
Okay.
That being said, I think, you just got to stick in there and realize, okay, down the road, these people are going to be back. You're going to be back on the group rides. Hopefully things will get back to normal. I kind of keep that goal in sight. And then when I'm doing my training and just making sure that I stay in shape, so when I do get back to that, I can keep up with everybody.
Yeah.
That's really the main thing I've seen. I think, though, another thing that, because there haven't been a lot of these group events and such, it has forced me to do some more solo stuff that I wasn't doing in the past, which sometimes is good because it does get you to kind of be on your own and kind of focus on your own goals and on your own weaknesses and things like that. So it's kind of been a bag, but I do have to say I'll be much happier when everything's back to normal.
Okay. All right. So looking at things getting back to normal and just previous races that you guys have done, do you have a favorite race that you've done that you're hoping, this year or even next year you'll be able to hop in on? And if so, what is it and why is it your favorite race? Dr. Geyer, let's start with you on this one.
I'll have to say that my favorite race of all time is not actually a triathlon. It's a mountain bike race. It's the Leadville 100 out in Colorado.
Okay.
Twice. It is the hardest race I've ever done in my life. I've even said it was way harder than an Ironman. And part of it's because you start at 10,000 feet and you go up to 12,500. And those of us here at sea level, that's just really hard. So it's the hardest race. So those of you that know about it, it's 105 miles actually, 105-mile race, off-road mountain bike race, 3,000 participants. It is brutal, and you're 50 miles into it saying, why did I ever want to do this? You're at 12 and a half thousand feet and you can't breathe and saying, this is the worst thing I've ever done. I don't want to ever do this again. Then you get done and say, okay, when can I sign up for next year? So that's one of the events I got canceled last year that I was very frustrated about. But I think the reason I like it so much is it's such a challenge. It pushes you past anything you can imagine. And it's just gorgeous out there too. So that is my favorite race I've ever done. And I'm really looking forward to get back to that. As far as with multi-sport events with triathlon, I really like Chattanooga. I think Chattanooga is a really fun event. It's hilly. It's got hills. It's got flats. It's a fast swim. I mean, those are all fun things, and it's a great venue. I like Chattanooga, so that's another one I'd like to get back to when I can.
And I'm surprised you say that about a fast swim for that one because you're a strong swimmer already, correct?
Yes, that's one of my strong points. The swim and the bike are my two strong points. The run is not. But even with that, it kind of saved my energy, I guess, a little bit more for the bike, which is my favorite, and that's one of the reasons I did like that one. Okay.
Got it. All right, perfect. Elyse, what about you? What's your favorite event? You've mentioned the Big Island a couple times. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a given just because of the excitement and, everything that surrounds it. But in order to get there, you have to qualify. And so obviously for me, it has to be my two favorites are Ironman Florida, simply because proximity. I'm also I'm 6'2", for all of y'all out there. So I'm a very tall athlete, and it's more of like a power, how many watts can you push, watts per kg can you push on the course, those courses. And honestly, even Chattanooga, I was going to say that was my second favorite. It are my favorite, and I won in 2017. So it's just a special place in my heart. The run course is so fun. It's always loaded with just people out being crazy at every mile. And I like it because, as a mom, family can stay in a awesome, 3-4 bedroom condo and enjoy the beach, and they can have fun, and so that way it's not all just about you. Like, you feel a little bit less guilty racing, when that they're having fun, and the kids can have their own bedroom. So it's clutch.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So with all of that, one of the things, and I really have this question on here, mostly because we have you on here, Dr. Geyer, as a foot and ankle specialist. So, first of all, what shoes do you guys run in? What is your go-to shoe, whether it's training or race day? And if so, do you have a different training versus race day shoe? Elyse, go ahead and start this one off for us.
All right. I'm huge at preventing, or I'm very pro like preventing plantar fasciitis.
Okay.
So I had it once, like when I very first started training, and that was terrible. There's nothing you could do. So that being said, I'm that athlete that has about 4 pairs of shoes. But they're all different kinds. Like I have a Saucony Kimbara, which are my absolute favorite. I have Adidas, what is it, Adios or whatnot. And then I have some Nikes, specifically for trail running, the horse, I can't remember what it's called. But anyways, I have 3 to 4 pairs all the time that I rotate, and I never wear the same pair. Like I don't run in the same pair 2 days in a row.
Oh, really?
That's just been a rule of mine. Like even if it's my favorite pair, I save it. So yeah, that's
okay.
Let's go to the doctor on this one.
Yeah, Dr. Geyer, what's your shoe that your go-to shoe or shoes in Elise's case?
So this is the first thing I'll say. This is what I tell every one of my patients that comes in, every athlete.
Okay.
Shoe does not matter. It's how it fits your foot and how it feels. Because Saucony, New Balance, Brooks, Adidas, Ace, they all are very good shoes. They're all very well made. And in fact, some of them are probably made in the same factory with different branding put on there. What fits you best? And me personally, I've tried them all. And for me personally, I use Asics. The Asics GT, I think they change the number every year, but it's like a 2060, 28, whatever. They change it every year. But that's the one I've been running in for years. Okay. And just happens to fit my foot the best, and my foot structure, my gait, all those things. Some people love Hokas. The Hokas, it's a big craze now, but some people either love them or hate them. Great shoe also, well made. But the key thing I tell everybody is you need to try the shoes out. See which ones fit you the best, which ones you feel the most comfortable in. I don't really, personally, I don't change my race day shoes and my training shoes because really they're relatively lightweight. I don't really care much about weight for running shoes mostly because I'm a heavy guy. I'm a big guy. I'm not one of these very thin runners. So I need as much support as possible. When I'm doing a longer distance, like a half or a full, I need to have some, or I got some problems. So very supportive shoe to me. Some people do well in the minimalist shoes, but that's there was this minimalist shoe craze for a long time. I saw a lot of problems with that, but people that were used to a very supportive shoe moving to a minimalist shoe over time, and they figure that out over time. There's a lot of there's a lot of debate out there. A lot of even the therapists and the developers, have a lot of debate out there. So
okay.
I encourage people never to get kind of caught up in a craze. You got to find the shoe that fits you the best and feels the best and prevent injury. So if it's a heavier shoe, it's a heavier shoe. If it's a lighter shoe, it's a lighter shoe. You just got to find what works for you. And we have some very good people here in town. So we have 3 very good running shoe stores that have good people that can fit you well. You just got to try them out. And that's really my big thing. The other thing, the biggest thing I say about shoes, do not let them wear out. Every minimum of, you have to change your shoes at least every 6 months or sooner. It depends on your mileage, what you're doing and such, but don't let it go past that, because even if you're not putting that much mileage in, the materials actually break down with the sweat and the water and things like that, and then you get problems. But if you're doing higher mileage, it has to be much sooner than that too. And that's another key thing to keep in mind. Don't let your shoes wear out. If you don't have a tread on your shoe, it's way past overdue. You're going to be in my office, and you don't want to be there. So.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, I've taken kind of that perspective that you have on shoes. It's got to be what fits you, because I feel fast in a pair of Adidas shoes, but they wear my toes raw. So I have gone to Ultras, which if you've ever seen Ultras, they have a really wide toe box. And if you look at my foot, I've got a foot that looks like a club pretty much. So they fit me great. They don't feel fast, but I also don't end up with blisters. So for me at the end of the day for a training run, I'll take that. If I'm going to do a half marathon or something like that, I'll switch over to something where I might have to suffer a little bit the last couple miles just for a little bit more speed. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I'd rather be comfortable for the long haul than struggling and hating life. So you did address the question that I was going to ask, though. Minimalist versus something like a Hoka that's got a whole lot to it. There's a really big difference between the two of them. And, the one question that I ask a lot of my athletes is, how does a pair of Hokas impact gait? Is it changing your running form and making you become more of a heel striker versus, okay, maybe a midfoot runner, or is that how they naturally run? So I don't know if you've seen anything on that at all, because you've got so much cushion and foam in those now that, it could potentially change that.
Yes, it can. There was this whole big thing a few years ago is like, oh, heel strikes bad. Heel strikes bad. You got to get on your toes. That's not true. Everybody, and especially if you look at the studies out of the gait analysis labs and things like that, people that run, there are some people that are more natural of a toe, they run on the or midfoot or toe strike versus heel strike, but not everybody's that way. I'm a heel striker and I've never had a problem with it. I see a lot more problem when people try to change things, change their game. We know that even in the people that do the toe, so one of the things they found in a lot of the gait analysis is in people that do try to switch more to a toe strike rather than a heel strike, they get more Achilles problems or more calf problems. But it's very different from person to person. It's very hard to kind of generalization to everybody. And so that's why I say comfort is best. Comfort is best. That's my opinion. Other people have other opinions. But that's what I see as the best. If you switch to a different shoe that makes you strike differently, and you start having issues as far as injuries and pain and stuff, you know that shoe's not for you. And so trying to force yourself to be more of a midfoot or a 4-foot striker, if you've always been a heel striker for 20, 30 years of running, you might want to do that. You might want to try to stick with what you have. And that's kind of what I think we're learning over time. And if you look back over the years, if you look back at the last 30 years, it's always something different. In the 80s, they're like, heel strike's great. And then in the 2000s, like, oh no, you got to be a 4-foot striker. No, I think everybody's different. And it's very different from person to person. And so you got to kind of figure out what's best for you.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Very good. All right. So I know for both of you, it's a matter of scheduling and how do you work everything out. And I know at least for you tonight, even to be here was working out scheduling. So with your guys' training, how have you found full-time jobs? We see it with our athletes too, full-time jobs, families, kids, extracurricular activities, anything of that takes time throughout the day. What have you done personally with your schedules to find that niche or that time for training that works best for you? Elyse, go ahead and start off for us.
Yeah, it's early morning. I mean, it depends on where we are in the season. Like right now, we're kind of maintenance. I'm just going to go ahead and predict that, probably races aren't going to start until the fall, right? So, well, especially for me being pregnant, right? So, it's not necessarily a huge priority for me to like wake up and get a 4 a.m. session in or 5 a.m. session. But when it gets closer to go time and I have to, then that's just what I do. And during nap time for my toddler, that's, I have to, it just comes down to commitment and your why. And it's so hard. But you know what? It's like, you can only do what you can. And then sometimes it depends on the day. The stress of being a mom and a parent and going to errands and going to doctor's appointments and all these sort of things, like that's probably more stress on your body than you going and doing like a run. So, forget the run, take it the day as it is and then move on. And don't say like, okay, I'm going to start, on Monday. No, just start the next day. Like, and just, I take it one day at a time. I think you have to as a parent too. And especially with COVID and everything that's going on, sometimes you get the call, hey, someone came down with COVID in your class, your kid's going to have to be out of school for 2 weeks. And you're like,
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you do what you can right now, especially in season. I make it a huge priority. I wake up early. Sometimes it's after he goes to bed. I get in a run, or I get in a swim, or whatever I have to do. But
yeah. Okay. What about you, Dr. Geyer?
So yeah, I'm very busy. Sometimes work 60 to 80 hours a week sometimes. And I have 3 kids and a family. And so I have a lot of commitments.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd like to tell my friends who are just about to start a family, or they just got married, or they just started a new job, is if you want to actually continue to stay active and train, don't just, oh, I'm going to do it when I have time. No, you have to put it on your calendar, just like everything else. So like what I do during the week, 6 a.m. to 7:15 a.m., that's my training time every single day. The only exception is if I have an emergency with my family, or there's something like if I'm on trauma call or something comes in and I have to go to the hospital and do something. That's the only exception. You always, that is basically protected time for training. If you don't do that, you're not going to train. And then, of course, when the time changes and every Wednesday night I do food line, well, that's my protected time also. I even tell my staff, hey, don't ever schedule a meeting, don't ever schedule anything from 6 to 8 p.m. on a Wednesday, because I'm not going to be there. And so you have to do it that way. Of course, there's going to be emergencies that come up and things, but if you do not schedule time on your calendar, just like everything else in your life, you're not going to do it. So that is the number one thing I've learned, and that's the number one thing I do to make sure I can still train. And also, another part of that is I don't have the time to go out and do a 4-hour ride every day like some people do. And it's great. I wish I did, but I don't. So that has also changed the way I train. So, and my coaches know that when I tell them, hey, I've got this amount of time, I need the most quality training during that time. Well, that's what we tailor everything to. I do a lot more interval training than I think some people do because of that. And it's actually been able to keep me competitive, because I just do not have the amount of time needed to do a lot of the training that some people do. So those are my 2 biggest parts of advice. Put it on your calendar, make sure it's scheduled, and also tailor your training to the amount of time you have there to have the best amount of training you can do.
Yeah. And I think, Elyse, you touched on a really good point as well. There are days where life gets away from you and your schedule gets away from you. And it's a matter of, okay, yes, it didn't happen today, but you're not going to push it off for the entire week. You're going to get back to it tomorrow, whether you readjust the training plan, whether you readjust the schedule for the rest of the week or the rest of the month or the block, whatever it may be, it needs to be readjusted. And then you get back into that same exact routine. The longer you let that go and the longer you let that progress, the more likely you are to get out of that rut. And I always hear it from athletes who, especially that have an injury of some sort, they have to take off 2 to 4 weeks to let their injuries heal, or to let some aches and pains heal. And then you've filled all of that time. You filled your 6 to 15 hours, depending upon how much you train, or even 3 hours a week. You've already filled that training time. So now where did it go? You can't, it's hard to find it again. So maintaining that routine for, as basically having as little of a lapse in your routine as you possibly can. I think that's a great addition to all of that. So perfect. Thank you guys for that. With that being said, the number one question that we always get, and we even had it on some of our Facebook and Instagram remarks already, is based on nutrition. And it's more of a, not necessarily what to eat and how to eat, because we already know it's different for every individual athlete. It always is. So for you guys, what have you found, first of all, that works for you for Ironman specific? And I say Ironman specific because I feel like it's very different than just hopping on a bike and going and doing a workout. When you have to swim, you're getting out of the water already dehydrated, already behind on your calorie count. Then you've got your bike, and then you have to go to a run that a lot of people from a GI standpoint can't sustain the same calorie intake on the run as they can on the bike. What have you guys found that works well for you so far? Dr. Geyer, go ahead and start us off on this.
Yeah, so my nutrition varies based on the distance. Ironman is very different than half Ironman or a Olympic distance or something like that. And really, some of it is you got to experiment in your training and see what sits well on your GI tract versus what doesn't. never go into a race and try something new. That's the number one thing. Don't ever do that. I made the mistake in one Ironman of there's this little tent here with something new that's a salt tablet. Let me try that. Oh, that was a disaster. So don't ever do that. But what I found that works best for me, I hydrate with a I kind of have a couple different bottles when I ride and when I'm running. I've kind of figured out over time that works for me. I don't like to drink just plain water. I always have something in it, and it's going to be different from person to person. Sometimes it's just Powerade. Powerade's got the sugar. It's got some of the electrolytes. That works well. I in the past have used. I like to use Perpetuum myself. That's a higher calorie and stuff for longer distance races like Ironman or Leadville 100 or something like that. That seems to sit well with my GI tract. Peanut butter and honey. I love peanut butter and honey. That works really well for me. Peanut butter and honey sandwiches, bananas, gels. People, I really like the gel chews that Cliff Bar came out with those. But the thing is, my biggest thing to tell everybody is you got to experiment these. See what works well for you. This is what I've found works well with me after experimenting for years and years. I have a tendency to cramp in the heat. And so I figured out what electrolyte tabs work for me. And I have kind of a combination I've figured out over time that works well for me. So a lot of it is figuring it out on your own. But the other thing is that I would say that I think is very important in any distance event is even if you have to set times of when you're going to take your nutrition. Like say, for example, at the 45-minute mark, you need to be halfway through a certain bottle, or you have to have taken a gel, or you have to eat a sandwich. You have to figure that out and make sure that you stick to those time points. Don't get behind on it, because when you're on mile 16 in the run and you hadn't been eating on the bike, you're in trouble, because that's when it doesn't hit you in the bike, it hits you later on. So you have to figure out that schedule and stick to it. That's a very important thing, I think. For myself, that I've learned over time, is you stick to your schedule, otherwise you're in trouble. Yep.
Yeah, you can't catch up, in other words.
Exactly, especially with hydration. That is the number one thing. You never can catch up on hydration, particularly if it's a hot event. You get behind that, you're hosed. There's no way. If you hit that dehydrated point, you can't catch up. You're done. That's a very, very bad situation to be in. And I've been there before. I've been cramped before and dehydrated. You got to, even if you're not thirsty, if it's that time point to drink, you better be drinking. Otherwise, you're going to have trouble down the road.
Yep. All right. Perfect. Elyse, what have you found that works well for you?
Man, this is my favorite subject. I could talk about this all the time. So you guys look me up and ask me questions after this if anyone has anything. Okay, so I swear I should have been a dietitian, because this is just fascinating. So Ironman 100% is just, you have to be dialed in. That's plain and simple. And I tell everybody this, what did you do in Kona? I'm like, it doesn't matter what I did. And they, I was the first American in my age group to place on the podium. And I'm like, look, there are a billion different athletes that are just way faster than me that should have beat me. But they didn't, because nutrition is key when it comes to Ironman. And what works for me is, and I'm no way sponsored by them, I promise. So I don't get anything, but it's called the Core Diet. And there's a book you can buy on Amazon, and it's called the Endurance Training Cookbook. And it is pure gold, and it's tailored specifically to you. It will tell you the calculations of what you need to do, and it gives you advice on how to preload and hydrate before an Ironman, how to and what you need to do for recovery, and what your carb to protein to fat ratio should be. And it's literally the best $14 that you can ever spend. And you can get it on Amazon Prime. It's by Jesse Krumpelnicki. But for instance, he talks about 14 days going into an Ironman. We like to hyperhydrate our stomachs. So you essentially are expanding your stomach. So I take in in an Ironman, 2 bottles an hour. That's 2 24-ounce bottles an hour. So in training, that 14 days prior, I will practice on the bike taking in about 2.5 are 2.25 bottles an hour. So that way, when it comes to the race during Ironman, my stomach will easily be able to digest and absorb those nutrients at my race pace intensity. And I avoid GI issues. And it just like Dr. Aaron said, you have to practice. You have to practice beforehand, and you have to dial it in and make notes. Like every ride in your training peaks or final surge, whatever you use, write down what you did, what you liked about it, what you didn't, and how you felt the next day or two after, because that also has a lot to do with your hydration status. For me, I found out that I need, like in an Ironman, I need some sort of solids at the beginning. So I'll do like maybe a cliff shot block. I do one every 10 minutes. So that
when you say a cliff shot block, are you talking an individual block every 10 minutes?
Individual block, one
okay, block. That's dedication.
Every 10 minutes. And so it's a steady state of the sugar, the carbs, and it's every hour. So one sleeve is for an hour. And then I gradually taper it off to, gels. And I go, and all this is in the endurance training cookbook as well, but I go from caffeinated products to or uncaffeinated products at the beginning of an Ironman to mile 60, 70. It's all caffeine, baby. So it's, caffeinated gels, caffeinated cliff shot blocks, if that's what I want. And then I don't stop the caffeine until I finish the race. And so you feel like, $1 million when that caffeine hits you for the first time, and you just, you feel refreshed and feel dialed in. But I think it's definitely essential to practice beforehand, make notes of what works, what doesn't, and then trial, all the different products. There's something out there for everyone. So for me, I can't personally do fats when I race Ironman. So I stick to as little fat possible, but I know a lot of people do. So
well, and I think the other thing is it's climate dependent as well, dependent upon what you're doing. Because I'm assuming you said you're taking 24-ounce bottles an hour. I'm assuming that's more for an event like Florida or Kona, where the heat and humidity are high, versus somewhere where it would be up north and 70 and cooler, right?
Well, actually, I have a very high sweat rate. I'll do a sweat test, a 1 hour sweat test, just at the intensity that my race is. And I'll always titrate accordingly. But I'm a sweater. So actually for Kona and stuff, I actually have to bump it up even more, believe it or not. But you're taking in enough fluid. If on the core diet, it kind of tells you if in an Ironman, you have to pee once by mile 56, pee twice by the end of the by the half Iron, or by the full bike ride. And if you haven't, then you're behind on your calories, you're behind on your hydration. So that just dial it in.
So I know both of you train with power. I'm a big data nerd and junkie, quite honestly. So do you use your power and your kilojoule burn or your kilojoules of work while you're on the bike to calculate or adjust your calorie intake as well?
I don't use it to adjust my calorie burn, but I always have power goals. I always figure out what's my power going to be that I have to maintain for this particular distance, and it's very different for different distances. Sometimes it's a little frustrating. That's one of the things that frustrates me in an Ironman is I'm keeping a lower power than I normally would push for like a 40. As you know, Brady knows me. I love to push. I'm a big on the bike, and I push a lot of power for time trialing, and it's having to hold back is frustrating to me. But you have to, otherwise you blow yourself up later. But I don't use it to adjust my calorie intake. I kind of have a plan, and that's another thing. I totally agree with Elyse. You've got to have a plan. You have to have when you go into. You don't figure out as you go along. And I also totally agree that solid foods at the beginning, gels and things like that at the end, because your stomach as you go through the race kind of shuts down for solid foods, and it needs something easier to digest because that blood is going to your muscles that are working rather than your GI tract. And so caffeine. I also totally agree with Elyse. I love caffeine. I mean, I have actually these cans of cold brew coffee that I love to use during the run that I have in my little stash, and it's like a nitro boost. It is amazing. So you totally agree with that as well. Just getting off off topic a little bit, but like one of my favorite things is caffeine.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I think, end of the day, there's a lot of information that's out there, whether it's information or misinformation on a lot of different aspects of it. But I think at the end of the day, you need to figure out what works specifically for you. I know I've got athletes who do purely solid foods, and that works well for them. It's pace dependent and intensity dependent. But then I've got other athletes who do 100% liquid nutrition throughout their Ironman or half Ironman events as well. And it's a matter of it's taken them time to figure out what works for them. The one problem that I do see with athletes that have 100% liquid nutrition for their races is if they get a cold race or a cooler race versus what they're used to training in or are expecting to race in, they're not getting the same number of calories because they're not wanting or don't have that desire to drink as much because their sweat rate's lower. And vice versa, if it's an incredibly hot race, then they're trying to get the fluids in at the same point in time, and their body's not used to trying to absorb all of the calories that they're putting into the system at that point, and then they end up with GI distress as well. So it's a matter of planning for both of those variables and having an alternate. Okay, it's going to be really hot today, so I need to have additional bottles of something other than just this sports drink that might potentially overload my system, or I at least need to know how to respond to that. So, but yeah, I think planning is key number 1, 2, and 3 right off of all of that. So anything additional you guys want to add to that one? Okay. All right. Perfect. So we're going to go on to the first question from Travis, and it's: does anybody have any recovery advice for mature athletes? Is what he said. So really, from what I've seen and from what a lot of our athletes are seeing right now is, as Dr. Geyer alluded to it earlier, with COVID, everybody is focusing more on quality of life and overall health and strength and maintenance more than anything. And we've seen athletes be able to train harder and be able to put in more time because they're taking better care of their bodies. So, have you guys experienced that yourselves, or what are you doing currently from a recovery modality that you found that works really well for you? Elyse, are you passing it off? Is that what that pointing is? Okay. Yeah, go ahead and start us off if you would.
Well, I guess I consider myself a mature athlete now because I'm in my late 40s, but I've been doing this a long time. So I will say this: I was very bad earlier in my career of taking rest and doing recovery type things. Now that I've gotten a little older, I find that I have to do that or I get injured. And that's just physiology of how as we age. Recovery wise, there's a couple of things I've adopted that I think help a lot, and some of it just has to do with training. Like, for example, if I know if I have a hard run day, I did running intervals or something, I swim the next day because that swimming is a really, really good recovery activity for your legs if you did a hard leg workout. And then it switches to the next muscle group in your arm. So I do that a lot. Like, I'll do a hard run day, swim the next day, and that keeps you going. But it also doesn't stress those same muscles the same way. I really have a problem with people that work out every single day really hard. I think you've got to have recovery days. I have days. As I've gotten older, I actually take more days off during the week. I will have at least one day a week where I don't do anything athletic. I hang out with my kids. I sit on the beach, whatever. I go fishing, just doing nothing. I think on days when I'm trying to get a recovery in after like a really hard workout or a race, I'll do like a 30-minute spin on the bike too. Very easy, just to keep the blood flowing, get the kind of things pumped out of your muscles. So recovery, I think that really helps me a lot. But I'm a strong believer in at least one day a week of doing nothing athletic, because I think that really gives you the rest your body needs. The other thing, I think recovery-wise, I'm a very big believer in stretching. I'm a very big believer in doing core work throughout your training, making sure you have core work built in there. I think that helps recovery. It helps all the muscle groups that you're trying to recover. I don't use a lot of ice. Some people like ice baths, and I think that works well for some people. I will ice things that don't feel good if I've got like some strain or something like that. I am a big believer in massage. I tend to roll out muscles a lot if they're sore. At least once a week, I kind of do a lot of rolling out of particularly my hamstrings and calves where I've had problems over the years. That's a good recovery thing for me personally. But that does bring me to that every person's a little bit different. Some people recover better than others. Some people have certain modalities they find works better for them than others. But I really like rest. I think rest is one of the biggest things. We're not meant to go hard every single day of the week, in perpetuum. You want to have some type of resting here and there.
Yeah. Okay. Elyse, what's your story there?
Yeah, so I don't take any days off. But that being said, if anyone like follows me on Zwift or anything, it's like my watts are like way up here or way, 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 way down here. So as my coach says, like take your easy days easy and take your hard days hard. And he means that. And so it's like, man, when I say go easy, like this is your recovery day, like enjoy it. Like if you want to put on Netflix, get on Zwift, spin your legs out. Like that's what, every workout has its point. And for me, especially now, like, it's probably 80-20, 80% of my workouts are pretty darn easy. That zone 2 kind of training, or even low zone 2, high zone 1. I love to swim as a recovery. I'm totally with you on that. I think that's awesome. I'm totally into like the 4-to-1 carb to protein shakes post recovery. I just put protein powder in a shaker bottle. All I have to do is find water at wherever I'm at and shake it and go. I wish I was really good at stretching, but like as a mom, I'm like begging the babysitter to just let me get a shower in, so I don't smell the rest of the day. So I really wish I could say that I stretched. If you have time, awesome. Like that would be great. And then the other thing I do is I'm really big at core strengthening sessions and doing a lot of lateral movements side to side. Because everything that we do is going forward. So I try to do a lot of like lateral movements just to kind of strengthen my ankles. Well, you probably know a lot better on what to do and what not to do, but yeah, that's just what I do. And then when in doubt, listen to your body every single day, every single workout. If you're not feeling it, if you're tired, look at your nutrition. Or look at the day before and your hydration status and stuff, and know when to push it and know when not to. You just have to listen to your body.
Yeah. So with that being said, we mentioned earlier that if you want to get it done, whether it's training or anything in life or work related, you put it on your calendar. So is strength or stretching on either of your calendars? And if so, how much of it in a week would you say is on there? Elyse, go ahead and let's go right back to you.
Yeah, I do strength training right now. It's 3 times a week. I just do 30 minutes. If I go over, awesome. It's not it. My coach just wants me to do something, especially being 36 weeks pregnant, getting everything. Yeah. That's huge. It's huge. And during the season, it's still a priority to me. Is it as much of a priority as swimming, biking, running? No, but it probably should be, but even if it's showing up to the gym and just stretching, like that's awesome, good for me. But if he puts it on the calendar, you bet I'm going to do it because I have to have it green. So
yeah. Got
it. He knows.
Yep. What about you, Dr. Geyer?
I do core strengthening once a week. Usually it's a 3-minute session. I don't do too much past that. I just really haven't had time. But I kind of work that in. I don't do a lot. Personally, I don't do a lot of weight training because I'm kind of one of those people that bulks up if I do too much weight training, and I don't want to be too heavy. Really, that's just personally that's my body type. So, but I do like core and body weight workout stuff once a week. I'll tell you though, it has made a huge difference. About 2 or 3 years ago, I wasn't doing any core work, and my wife was really big into yoga and stuff. I'd read some articles. I'm like, hey, teach me how to do some of this stuff, and she taught me. And she was laughing at me how weak I was in my core. Like I couldn't hold a plank for a minute. and here I am, and I was crushing it on the bike. But I think it's huge. It makes a huge difference. You get less tired during when you're riding or running. It saves it really, I think, saves you for the activity you're doing. And so it's a huge advantage. And so I strongly encourage people, and it's simple. It's very simple. You don't have to put a ton of time into it. Just some simple exercises that are out there that really help with your core. And so at least once a week, I do it and kind of fit it in there.
Yeah. And I think with that being said, Elyse said it perfectly. You need to do things in varying planes of movement. Everything that we do is this forward motion, whether it's pedaling a bike, whether it's running, whether it's swimming, it's all in one plane of motion for the most part. So I think that's a really big thing. You need to get some lateral work in there. You need to get something to actually strengthen your back. We sit at a desk all day. We sit on our phones all day. We sit on a bike all day. We're hunched over constantly. So trying to balance the body out a little bit so that you can make yourself a little more bulletproof, hopefully. And then, the other thing that you both alluded to, it doesn't take an hour or 2 hours in the gym. You can get something that's going to be beneficial, whether it's after a workout, whether it's, in a little bit of downtime. I know for myself personally, I've just got some bands at the house that I'll use. And whether it's 10 or 15 minutes, it's something that's getting me that advantage of I wouldn't do it otherwise. So, it's working on your weaknesses a little bit and working on the things that you don't always work on, but realizing that you don't have to go to a gym or that you don't necessarily have to spend 2 hours trying to overcome what you've already done on the bike. So I think that's all perfect advice, guys. And thank you so much with that. Moving with the training time and with the overall balance of things, we've got one question here that ties into that pretty well. And it's based on polarized versus sweet spot training. It's from Derek. I think it's funny that this comes up because we had a discussion, or I've had discussions with each of the SOS coaches over the last 3 weeks on this. There was a video that came out, and one of my athletes actually brought it to my attention, just wanting to know what my thoughts are. So we all sat down and talked about it as coaches as well. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, polarized training, you can break it into a couple different ways of looking at it, but it's doing things either really, really easy intensity, so upper zone 1, low zone 2 maybe, or really, really high intensity. And sweet spot training is kind of that just between a tempo effort and a threshold effort. It's not quite threshold, but it's not quite as easy as a tempo effort. So it's a very consistent aerobic capacity workout. And the question was, what's more effective on 6 to 10 hours a week? And my perspective on this is, and you're going to hate me, but it depends. It depends on what your goals are. It depends on what events you're doing, what really your focus is, because polarized, they both have a purpose and they both have a place in your training plan. And you can see benefits from both of them. You can be a triathlete and there's still a big benefit in doing VO2 work or doing 5-minute efforts all out. You might not like it because that's not what you're going to do on race day, but there is a benefit. Whereas race day, you're going to look at it dependent upon the length. In Olympic distance, you might be at threshold or close to it. Half Ironman, depending upon your ability level, you might be in that sweet spot range for a 56-mile bike. It depends on where your strengths are at. For you guys, though, do you have a thought process, a preference, or what you like to do with your training out of these two most? Elyse?
I'll go. I love this. This is a great question. I do both, and that's what probably does not want to hear that answer either. It's kind of interesting as I've developed as an athlete, established that base. I did more polarized training, I think, initially. And then just within the last 2 years, I've noticed sweet spot training has been for Ironman, especially. So taking my watts, maybe holding it for an hour. Say I have a 2-hour bike ride on the trainer. So I'll do just holding in a sweet spot, a little bit above Ironman watts for, I started maybe at 20 minutes or 30 minutes and then build up to an hour, has made me a more durable and stronger athlete. I think it's made that pace, that Ironman Watts effort pace feel so much easier. And so I did it. I mean, I didn't do it every day. No way. I did it, maybe once, maybe twice a week. But because it's hard on you mentally, for sure. You have to stay mentally focused, mentally engaged, and push yourself. But man, I loved it. And I saw great results for me as an athlete. And I'll definitely be doing that post baby as well to build back.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Dr. Geyer, what about you?
Yeah, I think it totally depends on what you're preparing for. And like I was saying before, I don't specifically do just longer distance races. I do kind of the whole gamut. I do a lot of cycling races still too, or running races. So I kind of tailor my training for that. In general, I tend to do a lot more polarized training, and that's mostly because of time constraints. And like I was mentioning earlier, I do a ton of interval training, and it tends to work for me. When I was training for Ironmans, I did do more sweet spot training, a lot more endurance type, tempo type rides and workouts and runs. But in general, I just tend to do polarized training. And for me, it works really well. I think that everybody's different. Everyone's body responds differently. And like I said, it depends on what event you're training for. But in general, polarized training has worked for me because of my training schedule. And it's allowed me to stay competitive with a lot of people out there that do a lot more hours. They put a lot more hours into their training, which I just don't have the luxury of having.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I agree with you on that one. You're exactly right. From a sweet spot standpoint, you need a little bit more time to be able to get that in, especially if you're looking at 3 sports. If you're just a cyclist, it's very easy to get that in. Or easier at least to get that in. Whereas when you have to focus on 3 sports, it makes it much more difficult to get all of that in. So want to address this last question here tonight. And then for anybody else that has submitted questions already, we'll address those here in a blog post here in the coming weeks or so, or in the coming week. But just know that we will address those questions. But tonight we had one other question from who we'll call the godfather of Zwift here in the Tallahassee area, Pete Butler. And you guys have, both of you do a lot of indoor training. Both of you do a lot of time on a trainer. So do you both ride Zwift? And if so, how much, and how has riding something like Zwift or even just using erg mode for intervals benefited your training? Elyse, go ahead. You live on that thing, it seems like.
I live on Zwift, y'all. I mean, come on. I'm pregnant and a mom, and when I hire a babysitter for 3 hours, I want to be able to get in a 3-hour ride. I mean, it's just plain and simple, or 2-hour ride, whatever it is. So, yeah, I freaking love it, and it pushes me, and I have no problem with turning off, like minimizing Zwift and just staying in Aero and just going. I've never had an issue with that. I don't actually do erg mode. I never have. I feel like for me, I need to be able to feel, like the different intervals and push myself. And heck, man, some days, like after chasing him around, my toddler around, the watts just like aren't there, or I give myself like grace. I give myself maybe 20, 30 watt window, and I may be on the lower end, or some days, that caffeine kicks in and I may be on the higher end. So I never do erg mode, and I just kind of go by. I use heart rate as well.
Okay.
But
and
love it.
Side note, are you able to get an Aero 8 months pregnant as well?
I am. I can't believe it. I know. My poor future child. Yeah. He's going to come out biking and running. That's for sure. Yeah. Training full time, man.
All right. Perfect. Dr. Geyer, what about you? Zwift, erg mode? What do you do on the trainer?
So first, let me preface with, I hate the trainer.
Yes.
I hate being indoors. The whole reason I got into cycling was being outdoors. I mean, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and used to ride when it was snowy out. That's how much I hate indoors. But that being said, the trainer is a necessary tool we use in training, and I I actually love the erg mode. It's for certain intervals. I use it a lot, and it's been very beneficial. There are certain things though I don't like it in, like if you have to do kind of quicker intervals, like Tabatas, for example. I don't use it because you're changing so quickly with your speed. So I don't use it then. But for a lot of things, I do like it because it does. I get bored on the trainer, so I lose focus. The erg mode, I think, forces you to stay at a constant kind of power output and effort. So I've liked that a lot. I don't do Zwift at all. I know Pete has loved Zwift, and he's on it all the time now, which makes me sad because he doesn't come out and ride with me anymore outside. But I just never got into it. I just don't really like it. So, but everyone's got their own way of training and what they like best. So that's just me.
Okay, perfect. Very good. Well, guys, I'm going to let you get off of here tonight. I just want to thank you both so much for taking this hour out of your week and helping us give a little bit of insight to everybody else who's watched throughout the evening here. For those of you that have watched, if you have more questions related to triathlon, if you're looking for any triathlon help, please let us know. We do also have our new Edge membership training plans, and we will be launching several new triathlon specific training plans here in the coming week. So those are going to be available to you on top of what we already have in our training library. But Dr. Geyer, Elyse, thank you both so much for your time this evening. We hope that everybody has gotten a wealth of knowledge from both of you tonight. And as always, I hope you guys have a great 21, a great race season. Fingers crossed, maybe. We'll hopefully do this again. I know in 4 weeks we do have a women's specific panel that will be on. So put that on your calendars, everybody who's watching right now. 4 weeks from now, we do have a women's specific panel that will be discussing more endurance related specifics just for the female athletes out there. So would have asked Elyse to join in, but she's very, very close to her due date at that point. So we're going to let her slide on this one, but there are some other people with a lot of varying experiences that will be on there, both varying ages and athletes, as well as the people that they have worked with over time. So hope you guys will tune in for that. Thank you so much for watching tonight, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week.